Veronica Parker with CAEP Technical Assistance Project, and I also have Neil Kelly with the CAEP office. Everyone is now in the room. If I could just have a couple people let me know if you are able to hear me at this time. Additionally, please let me know if you're able to see my screen. You're able to see the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, thank you. I have a few people letting me know that you can see both, so great. For those of you who are just now joining us, if you did not receive the PowerPoint presentation via email, it is available to you to download in the chat. So if you just click on the file and click on download, it will download to whatever file your computer downloads files to, and then definitely feel free to save that PowerPoint to your computer and follow along as we move forward with today's presentation. But before we get started, I've already checked to make sure everyone can hear me, but if any event you do fall into any technical issues, definitely be sure to let us know via the chat so that we can help you and fix whatever problems you are experiencing. We will communicate with you via a private chat, so definitely be on the lookout. When it's a private chat, it'll have either my name or Harley Clark's name from the CAEP office or CAEP TAP office, and it'll be in red. So that's our way of trying to communicate with you privately so that we don't disrupt the rest of the webinar. So definitely feel free to let us know if you experience any difficulties. Additionally, we will be taking attendance during today's webinar, so definitely be sure to let us know if who you are, if you have signed in but did not use the same name via the registration. Also, if you use like any acronyms or your consortium name, whatever the case may be, definitely be sure to let us know who you are so that we can account for you in our attendance. This webinar will be recorded and available on the California Adult Education website later on this afternoon. So if you have to leave for any reason, or if you would like to share this information with other colleagues, or even come back to view it again, maybe when you're working on your annual plan or you're doing some fiscal reporting and you need a reference, definitely be sure to check the CAEP website for a copy of the webinar recording, as well as a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. Both will be available to you. Please use the chat to communicate amongst one another, to ask questions, share information, and anything of that nature. There will be intermittent pauses throughout today's webinar where you are able to ask questions. So if you pose a question but it is not answered right then and there, definitely know that there will be a sufficient amount of time to be able to address any questions that you may have. That is all that I have at this time. I will turn it over to Neil, who will get us started with today's webinar. Neil.
All right, I'm just trying to get my screen sharing. Okay, there we go. And then I don't think I have the ability to advance slides, do I?
You hover over at the bottom. You should see the cursor, or even click into.
Oh, there, yeah, there, okay.
All right.
All right. It's not responding to my cursor. There we go. All right, so welcome everyone. In place of your Friday afternoon office hours, we're going to go over the annual plan process. Plus, I don't have any new information to share. We're waiting to see what the governor does. So why not have a planning webinar, right? Okay, so we'll go over CAEP planning. I'll talk a little bit about the annual plan, and then I'll turn it over to Veronica. She'll go through how you will process that in the in NOVA, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. So it's pretty brief, but the NOVA stuff does get a little bit in depth, which is good because you've probably haven't done this since last year on the annual plan. So Veronica will walk you through those steps, and not too many changes, but we'll go over a couple of things that we have for this year. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so just a reminder on CAEP planning, the current 3-year plans were submitted last year around this time. Those are regional plans to guide your consortia. The 3-year plans that you submitted last year drive your annual plans, which are due August 15th. And then that annual plan that's due August 15th drives your member work plans that are due September 30th. So there's a alignment, linkage, correlation between all this planning effort. Let's see if no questions about the 3-year plan. I'm going to go on to the Next slide. So here's we've been using this for a while, but it just kind of shows, you know, kind of the planning cycle, your pre-planning assessment, looking at community needs, customer needs, identifying goals and strategies, as well as piloting and implementation. I mean, this is kind of the schematic we use for the 3-year plan, but you can still use that for your annual plan. You can go back and check, you know, how is your 3-year plan working? We're not requiring you to go back and update it. This annual plan is kind of an update. You use it as an update because once those 3-year plans were submitted in June, a lot of things have changed. So, and we'll go over that in a little bit, but your annual plan might have to pivot to respond to things that have been happening in the last 3 or 4 months. So keep that in mind. I'm going to try to move to the next slide. Okay, so the annual plan for 2021, it's already in Nova. It's the same text boxes. Veronica will show you, you know, how those text boxes are set up, and it's pretty much the same process. It aligns with your 3-year planning process. You must type the responses into Nova. You can cut and paste them in from a Word document, I think. But you can't upload your annual plan. You have to type it directly into the text boxes. And then all your members, whether they receive funding or not, if they're a member, they must certify the annual plan. And then we should have a memo out early next week. We can send that to you directly, and it'll be in the newsletter. So look for that between either Monday or no later than Wednesday. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go briefly over kind of a snapshot or a highlight of the memo that's going to be released next week. And so the only big change from last year is in the executive summary, we want you to respond to 3 major things that have been going on: the COVID-19, the fact that we got our budget reduced, and the systematic racial injustices that are going on. You see the protests, things like that. How are we responding to that? How are you responding to racial injustices? Things like that. So I'll just give you a snapshot of what we're asking in the memo, and then you can prepare how you're going to respond to that in the executive summary, and hopefully some of your annual plan objectives, activities are going to focus on some of these things. And I know you've already pivoted to online education. You're probably discussing about how you're going to deal with if we get a reduced allocation, which is proposed. We'll see what happens next week with the governor's budget, and as well as the civil unrest and the protests. How are we dealing with systematic racial injustices? Are we looking at hiring practices? Are all students progressing and succeeding at an equal rate? Are they getting the supports they need? Are we looking at that from a demographic standpoint? So let's go into that in a little bit more of a deep dive. I'll pause there to see if we have any questions. And so far, no questions. Okay, next slide, please. So related to COVID, here's the language that's currently in the memo. Might change by next week, could be the same. So it says the executive summary should address how the consortia is serving students in a distance learning environment, meeting their learning needs, along with meeting staff, teacher, and faculty needs. Also, the executive summary should address how the consortia is responding to student supports, things like food, employment, clothing, health, shelter, public assistance. From the feedback we've been getting, many adult schools and non-credit programs have been involved in supporting supportive services related to our students as well. So that would be the response for COVID-19. We'd want to see some kind of information on that in the executive summary. And then the next one is on the budget reduction. And so we'll have to see if, next slide, please. There we go. Okay. So regarding budget reductions, we stated the COVID-19 epidemic has drastically changed California's budget outlook since the release of the governor's budget on January 10th. The executive summary must demonstrate that consortia allocations are being strategic and responsive to changes in the economy and the impacts on adult education programs and students. So how are you dealing with the reductions? What's your strategies? How are those allocations being responsive to changes and the impacts on students? So we'd like so Isla says, when will the memo go out? So we're looking at hopefully either Monday at the earliest, Wednesday at the latest. So hopefully that helps. And so we'd want some feedback on how you're dealing with that. Some people, are looking at carryover, they're looking at consortia pots. Some are, doing things with those fund sources as a way to be responsive to the changes and the allocation reductions, those kind of things. So we're already seeing that. And so it'd be nice to put that in writing of how you're being responsive to that. Next slide, please. And then the last specific area we want to cover in the executive summary is the systematic racial injustices. Consortia in their executive summary should describe any plans to examine the issue of their role in addressing structural racism within their membership and partners. We would encourage consortia and their members to examine the adult ed student journeys by demographics. What strategies and student supports can your consortia and its members use to ensure equitable student progress and success? So it talks about students there, but we're also talking about hiring practices, those kind of things. I mean, I kind of dabbled around in this. I'm not going to share it because I kind of went into Launchboard and did some kind of fooling around. So what I did is I looked at the number of students in California without a high school diploma. So I looked at African-American students, 170,000 students and adults in California don't have a high school diploma. And then I said, okay, so of that number of students, how many African-American students have enrolled in CAEP? So I went to Launchboard and 23%, so 40,000 students of those 170. I mean, it's not an exact science because we don't know if they enrolled to get their high school diploma, but it's kind of that needs thing. Then I looked at white students, and there's 625,000 students in California that don't have a high school diploma. And 26% of those students have enrolled in a CAEP program. And then I looked at Asian, and 405,000 students, no high school diploma. And then 111,000 or 22% have enrolled in a CAEP program. But then you could look at things like what's the student journey between ABE and to ASE? So in ABE enrollment for 18-19, we had about 76,000 students. 7% were African American, 13% white, 9% Asian, 62% Hispanic. So what are the educational functioning level gains in ABE for 18-19? We had about a little under 29,000. 6% African American, 10% white showed gains, 11% Asian, 64% Hispanic. So you got to look at that. So enrollment to student progress. Then I looked at transitions from ABE to ASE, which is a natural progression. African American, 9% transition, 12% white, 9% Asian, 59% Hispanic. Then he looked at how many that were enrolled in ASE actually got their diploma or GED or HiSET. And so white, 17.4% success rate, Hispanic, 14.2% success rate, African American, 13.3% success rate, Asian, 8% success rate. So, I mean, just looking at that, I would have questions. I would want to dive deeper, and that's at the state level. You could do that at the regional level. You could do that at the district level. It's all there in Launchboard. So So those are the kind of things we want you to look at, start thinking about. If there's things that just stand out that look really strange, then maybe dive a little deeper in that. But I'll pause there to see if we have any questions. Emma says, Neil, are you looking for individual member activity examples when we respond to the consortium activities for student support? For example, so Emma, I would say at this executive summary, it's going to be really high level. But in the annual plan objectives, you could put various specific objectives. Now the member's going to they're going to check boxes based on that annual plan, and Veronica will show you how that works. So the objectives should pretty be high level, not specific down to the district, because in the annual plan, those are objectives for the whole region. And then each of the member districts will select which ones they're going to work on, and they'll probably have specific activities under each of those objectives. So it might be better to have it more general, especially in the executive summary, because you're limited on a text box how many characters you can put in there. So you can't go on and on, it'll cut you off. Justin says, is there any kind of work limit on the, yeah, so there, I believe, Veronica, if you're able, do we have a text box limit on the executive summary? I thought we did have a character count. Maybe you can confirm that later in the presentation, or you might know right now.
Yes, and I also typed it in the chat. It's 5,000 characters.
Oh, okay. So if Justin and Emma were going to go on and on, you're really limited to just 5,000 characters. That includes spaces, you know, any kind of character as well. So Wendy had the same question, and Diana had the same question. So, and then there is Veronica's response. All right. So Wendy said, Neil, these student equity differences are system and nationwide. They may be exacerbated by the COVID emergency, but all colleges have an equity plan. Do you want us to cite that? Yeah, if that's something that non-credit is involved in, sometimes, you know, from what we've seen, sometimes non-credit doesn't get to the table on the credit side. It depends on how your college is set up. I know with City College, it's a little different. And some of the bigger non-credit colleges are involved in a lot of the planning as well as equity. But that's not always the case at some of those smaller non-credit programs. And then how does that cascade down, or how does that align with what's happening over the K-12 adult schools, which would be different with City College because they're the adult school provider for their region. Okay, so moving right along to the next slide. Okay, so then the next section would be regional needs and strategies, similar to what we've been doing the last few years. So just keep in mind the 3 areas we mentioned, you know, the last week of COVID, budget reduction, systematic racism, and then list any strategies that will assist you in meeting the needs to address those areas. Like I said, so COVID, you talk about the use of distance learning, budget reduction, strategic use of funds, systematic racial injustice. You talk about ensuring equitable student progress and success, those kind of things. Keep in mind, we have a 5,000 character limit that was just brought to our attention. So you got to keep it brief. We're not going to grade you on this, but it does help the state understand. And then it can also help as you start planning, putting in objectives for your annual plan. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is where Veronica takes over. We're gonna review the annual plan prompts, and she's gonna walk us through. And then after Veronica walks us through this, she'll show us how the annual plan connects to the member plan and how the member plan connects to the budget. So it all kind of connects. So I'll turn it over to Veronica.
All right, thank you, Neil, and thank you, everyone. So I am in the annual plan section of NOVA. I am in a safe environment, so the information that I enter will not be saved for this particular consortium. So if anyone's on the line from Antelope Valley, just be warned that I will use your consortia as a demonstration, but none of the information will be saved. So I will start here, but I will go to the live site once we get to the budget and work plan because of the way this is designed, I can only show you on the live site. However, I will not enter any information on live site because I don't want to mess with any consortia information. So here is the annual plan, and I am on the first section. So when I logged into Nova, I just went to consortia and then typed in the members ID, got to the member plan and clicked on annual plan. So here is the first section. Sometimes it doesn't always go to the first section, so you may just want to click into the first section of plans and goals if that's where you intend to start. And here you are just typing in an executive summary of your consortium's implementation plan for the 2020 to 2021 program year. And again, as Neil mentioned, you want to make sure that you address what the plan is for the entire year, but then also address the 3 areas if you're planning to do any activities in those 3 areas that he mentioned. As everyone had already asked, it is a character limit of 5,000. So once you start typing in here, your character limit will begin to go down. And also, in order to go past any of the sections and them to be designated as completed, you have to type in at least 5 characters. However, in order to let us know what you are doing, you want to make sure that you are being as clear, concise, and complete as possible. So here I'll just type in a simple sentence. Again, just a simple sentence to get me through. As you can see, my character limit went up to 38 of 5,000. And here I'm just going to copy and paste going down. The second part is a regional planning overview. So here you're talking about the annual plan and the strategies that are based on your 3-year plan. So how your consortium will be implementing the new 3-year plan. So I'm just going to copy and paste here again, just to get past this section. And then I always want to go to next. You always want to use the next button. If you can, click into the next section here, but using the next button will actually let the system know that you have completed this section. So I'm going to go next here, and it should have gone to complete. Oh, sorry. I have meeting regional needs. One more section. Sorry about that. And here you're going to be talking about your gaps in service or regional need. How did you know about those gaps in services? So identifying, how did you identify these gaps? And then the third question is, how will you measure effectiveness or progress towards meeting the needs? And so you'll use this to identify any local indicators planned for measuring student success. So I'm just going to copy and paste in here.
So, Veronica, quick question. Emma asked, as you type, does the system save automatically?
You know, that's a really good question. I know when you go from section to section, it saves. So I want to say yes, it does save. Because if I were to come out of this and go back in, my information will still be there.
Great, thank you.
So I'm going to scroll down, and if there is another regional need that you would like to add, you can click on this add regional, another regional need, and then you can begin typing your additional regional need. You have to have at least one. However, if you added one, but you feel like you no longer need it, you can hit the delete button and you would just have one regional need here. So I'm going to go next here, and it should update. See, okay, so sometimes you may have to click back and then go back to your next section. Eventually it'll catch up. The system is a little slower, at least on this side, it's a little slower. So, but it will save your information. So here you're going to start identifying your strategies. So the first one is gaps in service. So for this one, you're going to be talking about your plan to incrementally increase capacity and identify gap areas and or help maintain established levels of service. And you must list at least one. And then it gives you a little bit more explanation here. So you'll just briefly type in how you're going to do that. I'm just going to hit Control P just to continue to move along. Again, if you need to add another gap in service, you are able to do so here. And if you decided you no longer needed to, you only want to go back down to one, you can delete your additional one. So I'm going to go next here. And then I'm going to go seamless transition. So I'm going to identify my strategies here. So what new and or existing strategies are planned to integrate existing programs and create seamless transitions into post-secondary education or the workforce. Again, you must list at least one. I'm going to go Control here, P here. And if I need to add another one, I am able to do so, and I'm going to go next. And so you just continue to do that as you're identifying all of your strategies. Next, and then professional development, same. And again, I mentioned my system is a little slower, but if I click on these boxes, all of them turn into complete because I have at least 5 characters and I've answered at least one strategy, or I've listed at least one strategy. Control P here. And then go next. And then here, this one is a little bit different. We're talking about fiscal management. So this is just asking you to basically justify how you're going to use your allocations to support your strategies based on your 3-year plan. So I'm just going to enter in the same information. And then for this one, approach to incorporating remaining carryover funds. So this, we're asking you to identify how it is that you plan to spend any carryover funds that you may have.
Right. Veronica, I just add that, so when you're inputting these strategies, you can incorporate things you're doing with, distance learning. If there's something related to the budget reductions that you're cutting something back, you're not off, you could add that in. If there's something you're doing with equity, you could put that in. So this really gives you that option as you go through the strategies to put in those things that we've been going through the last 3 or 4 months. So it's really up to you of how you're going to approach that.
Okay, great. And then, so I've identified all of my strategies for the annual plan. So I'm going to go next here, and then it's going to give me everything that I have inputted into the system. So this is a point where you can review what you have listed here. And then once you've reviewed and it's in its, it's final in its entirety, then you are able to submit here. And I'm just going to click here just to make sure my submit button actually works. So I'm going to go submit here. And then this is prompting you to add any comments that you may have. So if there's anything that you would like to alert your other members to before they approve the annual plan, you are able to type in any comments you may have here. I don't have any at this time, so I'm going to just press OK, and then basically that submits my annual plan. And you know this because the status says submit. So at this point in time, all of the members are now alerted that you have completed the annual plan, and they will go in, review everything that you have documented, and then they will either approve it or reject it. And if it's rejected, then you will have the opportunity to go back in, make any revisions that are necessary, and resubmit the annual plan. One thing that I did want to mention, especially because the character limit did come up, we want you to use as much space as possible within this form. However, if you have a document that the consortium has prepared, and let's say you're using different graphics, especially when you're talking about how you're going to measure things or how you identify what the gaps in services are, if you have a document that you would like to upload that is related to your annual plan, you do have the opportunity to do so by uploading it into your supporting documents section. So I'm scrolling down to the supporting documents section. If I wanted to add my complete annual plan with, colors and graphics, special formatting, things of that nature, you could just go here and add your document here. So you'll select the document type, and I don't think there is one for annual plan. So you would just select supporting documentation, find the file on your computer, and then put in a description of this document. So you can say something like comprehensive annual plan for the 2020-2021 program year or something like that. And again, it's another way for you to have this historic information appended to your consortium, and then people are able to see as well. And we do want you to be as clear and concise and complete as possible with your annual plan, because I know the CAEP office and leadership looks at the annual plans to see what everyone's working on. And CAEP TAP also looks at it as we're trying to identify the plans that you all have moving through the program year so that we're able to meet your needs via professional development. So we definitely want to make sure that we have a clear, concrete understanding of what it is that you all will be working on throughout the year.
So Veronica, quick question. So people are wondering, how easy is it if they're typing the strategies and other documentation in a Word document? how easy is it to copy and paste from the Word document into the Nova text boxes?
Yes, so it's very easy. You just do your simple copy and paste. However, if there's any special formatting, so let's say you use bold, italics, maybe even like number formatting or bullets, that type of formatting will not transfer over. So it's very simple text in Nova. If you do have, let's say, a bulleted list that you want to make sure that it's identified as a bulleted list, I would use indentations to identify that this is kind of a subset of a larger list or something like that. But any special formatting does not transfer over. However, it is a simple copy and paste.
Okay, and then there's I think this is a question for me to answer from Mitch. What is the protocol if a member district refuses to approve an annual plan in Nova, even if it was approved by a consortia board vote? So what I would do is post those board minutes into Nova, then contact TAP, showing that the consortia approved it, and then we'd work with the programmers to override that. But on a parallel track, I would, if that member is not going along with the bylaws and the votes and not being an effective member by following up with certifications when they're supposed to, then I would start working with TAP to provide that member technical assistance. And if that doesn't work, then you have cause to reduce that member's funding later on in the year if the reasonable intervention hasn't been effective to turn that member around. So hopefully that helps. That you would work with TAP on that, and if need be, get the state office involved as well. So Veronica Kristen says it's easy to copy and paste, but it doesn't indent or separate paragraphs. It all ends up running together.
Okay, I'll check on that. But thank you for the clarification, Kristen. I also saw Crystal said the same thing. We'll check with the programmers on that as well.
Okay, and then Christy said it worked fine. She highly recommends that you save it in Word to assist you in future years. Wendy said this is why it's great to upload your PDF of your formatted plan, but you can't do that for the annual plan. Right, Veronica, you can't do a upload of a PDF, right?
Yeah, you can upload it in supporting documents.
Oh, I see. I see, okay. So, but you would still have to type that in the text boxes, but if you wanted to upload a nicer with charts and graphs, you could do that in the supporting documents, right?
Yes.
Okay, maybe I missed that, sorry.
No worries.
And then Yulene says, if you click share, not submit yet, are you sharing with the consortium members before you submit? Can they edit?
If they are a primary contact, I believe they are able to edit in Nova. But when you share, yes, you are sharing without submitting. They will have to log in if they are a primary contact to make edits to the annual plan.
Okay, and that's it on the questions. You want to move on to the next part?
Yes, I believe there are some fiscal related things you had in the PowerPoint. I can continue here though. You want to go back to the PowerPoint?
No, I think since you're on a roll, let's show them how the annual plans connect with the member plans. Would that be the next step? I would assume after you certify your annual plan, then the members would go in and start creating their plans.
Yes, that is correct. So as soon as your annual plan is submitted and all consortia members have approved the annual plan, your budget and work plan will open up. Right now, everyone's budget and work plan is visible, or at least a link is visible. However, when you click on it, nothing happens. And that's because the annual plan has not been submitted for most consortia. Some consortia have actually submitted their budget and work plan. So here I had picked Desert Regional Consortium. They were the first in the list to have submitted and approved their consortium annual plan. So now their budget and work plan is open. So you just So I'll go back out to show you exactly how I got here and how I was able to identify if their annual plan had been submitted and to see their budget and work plan. So I went on their consortium page and saw that the annual plan is consortium approved for the 2020 to 2021 program year. We have had questions from members who have asked us about this completed CNNA. So the way the programming is set up, it doesn't have your actual completed date and time on the outward facing interface of NOVA. Once the program year expires, then it'll populate the date and time here. But it is consortium approved at this time. So immediately after it became consortium approved, their 2020 to 2021 budget and work plan opened up. So they were able to make changes to it. So that's how I was able to access it. So here's their 2020 to 2021 budget and work plan, and all of their budgets at this time are in draft status. So I'm going to click on Coachella Valley Unified. However, I'm not going to be able to enter in any information. I am on the live site now, and I don't want to mess with any of their information on the live site. But I'm just going to show you guys a few areas that we definitely want everyone to pay attention to moving into this next program year. So I'm going to click on Coachella Valley Unified. And when I click on Coachella Valley Unified, since I was already in the member budget, it automatically populated there. So I want to go back to their work plan and click on their work plan because I want to look at their strategies, the strategies for the consortium, and identify which strategies, if I was the member representative for this agency, to identify the strategies that our agency will work on. So here are all of the gaps, here are all of the strategies that they have identified. So here is one for their gaps in service, and they have identified their strategy. And then this checkbox, which Neil had referred to previously, that's where you will check if this is an actual strategy that your agency will work on. Because remember, these are the consortium level strategies. Again, here is their seamless transitions strategy, their student acceleration strategy, their shared professional development strategy, leveraging resources strategy, and those are all of the strategies that they have identified. So of these, I can either pick one or pick all or anything in between that our agency will work on. So then next I'm going to go to the budget. Remember, I haven't selected anything because I don't want to change any of their information, but I'm going to go to hit next and go to the budget. So the budget, the total available funds for the budget are the 2020 to 2021 consortium allocation after the May revise. And additionally, it's any of their carryover funds, either from 2018 to 19 or 2019 to 20. So that's their lump sum of total available funds here. And then their total budget. So if I were to complete this budget and I were to start entering numbers or actual budget amounts here, then this number will go from 0 and increase to whatever the up until their remaining amount. Before this can be submitted, this remaining amount must equal 0. Here we have the direct costs, which are already, they will be calculated based on what's entered into the budget. The indirect costs will also be calculated based on what's entered into the budget. Also, the percentage of direct costs will be calculated automatically. And remember that the indirect cost is for a USD, it's the CDE indirect rate for the year up to 5%. And then consortium fiscal admin expenses. Now this is automatically calculated as well, but only if the member has checked that this budget item is related to the consortium fiscal / admin expenses. If there are no consortium fiscal admin expenses, so this particular agency does not provide oversight for the consortium, then there shouldn't be any expenses listed here. I'm going to scroll down to the actual budget to begin, if I were to begin entering budget items by object code. So here you're just entering the budget item title. Most people really just enter this, use this title as the actual object code name, but it's whatever you would like to put. And then the expenditure type. So here is where you're going to list the actual the actual budget object code that this budget item is related to. So you have your 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 other outgo, and then indirect costs. And remember, your indirect costs will be automatically calculated up top. Everything else will go into your direct costs. Then you're going to do a brief description of the expenditure. So we do want you to provide some type of description of the expenditure that this this budget item is related to. You are limited to 2,500 characters here, so definitely just let us know something. It's not a required field, so hypothetically speaking, you do not have to fill this out. However, it's good practice just to identify what these budget items are for. Then you will enter in the actual amount for 2020 to 2021. And then you will, like I said, check if it's a consortium fiscal / admin expense. Again, this is only if this particular agency is providing oversight as it relates to consortium fiscal / admin for the consortium. If this budget or this agency does not provide that oversight, please do not check this box right here. Then another area that we definitely want to bring to everyone's attention is the quarterly expenditure forecast. And we do notice that there are still some agencies within some consortia who are not completing this section. And so we definitely want to make sure that it's practice of everyone to complete this section, and then also be mindful of the manner that you are completing it. So we give you an example for the percentages, and these percentages basically says from quarter 1 through quarter 4, this is the percentage of my budget that I plan to expense. So we give you examples that you can use. You're not mandated to use these percentages. They are just examples because some people don't really understand what this is for or how to use it. So 15%, what you're saying when you enter 15% in quarter 1, you're saying for this budget line item, you're gonna expense at least 15% of the total for this object code. So let's say the object code is $1,000 and you enter in 15% here. So by the end of quarter 1, you would have expensed 15% of that $1,000. Then quarter 2, if you were to enter 30%, by quarter 2, you would have expensed 30% of this object code. It's cumulative, so it keeps building upon each other. So by quarter 3, if you were to put 45%, same thing. 45% of that $1,000 should be expensed by quarter 3. And in quarter 4, if you were to put 60%, that means at the end of quarter 4, you would have expensed 60% or $600 of that $1,000. And then you're planning to carry over 40% into the next program year. You can make budget revisions. You can change these percentages throughout the program year up until this certification of Q4. Once you submit and certify Q4 of a program year, you no longer have access to the budget and you no longer have access to the fiscal reports. But definitely use this to keep yourself in alignment, but then also to identify if for us is to identify if you have to complete a corrective action plan. So a corrective action plan will be populated if by the end of the quarter, you have not met at least 90% of what you have said that you will expense by the end of the quarter, then a corrective action plan will populate, and it's asking you to let us know what steps you will take to get back on target, pretty much. So definitely be mindful of this. We do see from time to time that because it is a required field now. It wasn't at first, so people weren't filling it out, but then also not really knowing and not filling it out properly. So definitely just be mindful of that. If you have to add, if you want to duplicate this budget item, you're able to do so here. If you want to add a new budget item, you are able to do so here. If you want to delete, you're able to do so as well. But this is the budget and work plan, the budget area. I just covered the work plan. I'm not going to go any further because I don't want to mess anything up, but I'm open for questions.
Okay, I think this is a question for me. If we get an additional cut to our allocations or restoration of the May cut, will we need to uncertify and then rebudget? So the way we'll handle that, currently we're working with the $484 million budget that was in the May revise. I don't foresee us getting additional cuts right away. If I I haven't heard about that happening. We know the Senate and Assembly put forth the budget to the governor that restored about $54 million worth of cuts, which brought us up to last year's or prior year funding levels, which is like, what, 538 million or something like that. So what we would do, if the governor signed that and we did get some of our cuts restored, we'd do another allocation amendment. And Veronica, do you want to tell them how that new allocation amendment would work and how they would have to first certify the original allocation amendment that was in for the reductions? So if we did that, how would that work?
Okay, so I'm going to come out of the budget and work plan and go back to this consortium's details page. And I will go to the allocation amendment. Well, first, let's check into the CFAD. So if the budget is restored by whatever amount, this negative, so right now it says negative $408,579. If they were to receive an increase, but the increase didn't cover their total original allocation here, whatever the increase is, it will decrease this negative number. But if it didn't go back to this 3 million, you will still have a negative number here. But definitely you just want to check to make sure that on your CFAD, although you aren't able to make any changes to it, that the system has updated to reflect whatever the increase may be. Then once you do that, you will go back out to the consortium details page. You will scroll down to your allocation amendment. Now here, your allocation will increase. So right now, this consortium has $2,966,564. If they were to receive, let's say, another million increase, then, or no, less than 400,000 increase, then this number will be increased. Their total remaining, they will now have a positive number, but it'll still be in red. So what that is saying is that you will have to complete an allocation amendment again by starting an amendment. I'm not going to press it because I'm on the live site, but you would start an amendment here to now account for the increase. So your proposed allocations for your members, however you decide that you want to designate that increase, your proposed allocations will now be increasing each member's allocation. You'll go through the allocation amendment process. So everyone will either approve or reject that allocation amendment. Let's say everyone approves it. Once the allocation amendment has been approved by the entire consortium, your budget and work plan will now open back up. So it'll go back into draft status like it is here. All members' budgets will go into draft status, and then each member will now have to go in and account for that increase. So again, your total available funds will increase. The total budget, let's say that you had already allocated this entire $3,500,000, this will remain the same. However, the total remaining will be a positive red number. And so what that's saying is the system now wants you to allocate or budget out that increase in your allocation. So you would go through and you will update your however you want to budget that increase. Let's say you want to put it all into instructional salaries, and this is your first budgeted item here, then you would just increase the dollar amount. And then you would see, okay, do I want to adjust my quarterly forecast? You can adjust that at this time. Once you've made all of your adjustments, you would go through the process of checking next and then preview, submit. The consortium lead will be notified that you have submitted a revised budget, and they will either certify it or they will reject it. And if they reject it, then you'll go back into draft status. But that's the process that you will go through if there was to be an increase in the total CAP allocation.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I think this is a policy question, but the next one might be a specific NOVA question. So Crystal says, is 60% supposed to be the minimum expenditure in order to spend funds on time? So Crystal, the reason we picked 60%, and that's 60% of all active funds, that we figured with 60%, it would actually spend down any carryover. So within that 2-year cycle, If you get to 60% of all funding, you would probably liquidate your prior year funding and prior year funding. And so you might only have carryover of current year funding. And so that's kind of how we came up with that 60%. But you might have bylaws in your consortia that are a little stricter than that. The spending forecast is not a policy thing set up by CAEP. It's just a guidelines as far as liquidating that carryover. But a lot of consortia have bylaws that govern those carryovers and spending and things like that. But we put that in there, and the forecasting in NOVA is just a tool that you can use. I think Emma's question might be more specific to you, Veronica, about initially we're told the target was to spend 15% per quarter. I noticed that if a member does not put a percent for a quarterly forecast, then they are below target. It will not prompt them to populate a corrective action plan, and members now are allowed to put in a different target than 15%. So does that make sense, Veronica? Do you want to respond to that?
Yes, Emma, so I think I understand your question. The actual question, yes, members are able to put in a different target than 15%. I've seen some members put in 25% across all 4 quarters. I've seen them follow the example. I've seen a lot of different variations. You are able to put in whatever expenditure target you want. You just have to have something in there that's true. That's what you plan on following. I hope that answers your question. Let me know if it doesn't.
And for a small fee, Veronica will do financial planning for you as well. And I think we answered Wendy. Wendy said, yeah, it's the same allocation amendment process we did for May. That's correct. You'll just see like Veronica was saying, you'll see the numbers go positive if we add money in there. What we did in May, we took money out, so you saw a negative. So we'll just go, hopefully we'll go in the reverse direction and add money in. So we'll know next week, and then we'll probably definitely contact everyone, send something out, communicate what the deadline is, things like that. And then Eileen says, I think she's asking if there is a built-in alert to members not making their target percentage. So I don't, Veronica, is there an alert if the member does not meet their target?
There isn't an alert. The corrective action plan appears. And that is a required field. So they will have to identify how or the steps they're going to take to get back on target.
Okay. And then Dana said, you mean the June 30th deadline for the amendment. So that June 30th deadline is for the reduction. So if we got an increase next week and the governor signed it, we do another allocation amendment, and that deadline would probably be, I hadn't even thought about that, but I guess if we gave you 45 days, we could give you towards, because that would, so it'll have contract to get that money out. So the sooner those come in, we could get that contract executed and get that other funding out. At least we'd have the, bulk of the funding going out hopefully by the fall. And then we'd follow up with additional funding in those other installments. So we'll deal with those details, but I mean, that would be a good thing to have a second allocation amendment, especially if it was adding money back in. So that's a good thing. Q asks, is the 15, 30, 45, 60 baseline spending not a CAEP requirement anymore? I think those are guidelines. I don't think that's a requirement. I mean, you do have 30 months to spend the money right now. I know there is talk, I haven't seen it in a bill yet, but there's talk about a carryover provision to restrict, how much money you can carry over. But we're still working within the 30-month guideline, 6 months to close out, 3 years. We put the 15, 30, 45, 60 baseline spending as guidance, because you still, with a corrective action, as Veronica said, you can go all the way into the 30th month before you close out these funds. We recommend not doing that, and your consortium might have bylaws that might reallocate those funds, which is perfectly legal. But no, it's just, those are just guidance documents or guidance percentages. So Yulene asked, we do have it ASAP because of annual plan due in August, budget work plan at the end of September, right? So like Veronica was showing us, that's a good point, Yulene. So if we do get more money, then we'd have to go back in and redo our budget work plans. So Veronica, I mean, so how, I mean, this is kind of the question coming in here. So if we did get more money and we did get that money out, so they would have to go back and do an allocation amendment, and then they would have to update their work plans. And so what's the time frame? Are we still giving them, I guess, the same time frame to complete these exercises? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so since most consortia have not completed their budget and work plan, if there was to be an increase, let's say in the next couple of weeks, and you still hadn't completed your budget and work plan, you would only have to do it once. So you would have to, of course, do the allocation amendment, which is one step. But if you haven't completed your budget and work plan at that point, you wouldn't have to go back and do it again. You would just have to complete it, what you had originally planned to do. And the due date for the budget and work plan, off the top of my head, I believe it's October 31st.
Yeah, to be certified. So
yeah, to be certified. So that, I believe we could still hold that deadline because that's still out in the future in the annual plan. Neil, I guess.
Yeah, so Crystal's question about, is it the same deadline? So actually your drop dead date is October 30th to get all this certified. So within that October 30th, you have to submit your annual plan. Your members have to go in and create their plan. Then they have to go and create their budget. So if you look at it, so what's today? Today is the almost the end of June. So you have all of July, all of August, all of September, all of October. And so the certification, I know Veronica can tell us some consortia did wait until the end of October, or they forgot and they were scrambling to, do their annual plan, then do their work plans, then do their budgets. They had forgot all that stuff, or they just got sidetracked. So really you have that 4-month window. Now how your consortia wants to set up the deadlines, people like the state telling them deadlines because that helps their members get stuff in on time. But it's very flexible, until that October 30th date, you could work through that 4-month window period, if that makes sense. Veronica, do you have any, what's your experiences? You don't have to name the consortia, but you have had some people that have delayed and they've had to go back and certify things. I mean, it doesn't mess up NOVA. It's just a logical process where you have to have certain things in place before you can move forward, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've had some consortia who didn't realize that they had to complete the annual plan first in order for their budget and work plan to appear. And of course, there were delays for other reasons, but yes, we've seen that before.
Right. And then Jody's question, would an increase in funding for the legislature impact the interagency agreement? I think we could, I don't think it's going to impact it that much. I pretty much know the ratio of how much goes to each agency, and we could kind of ballpark it and then follow up with maybe a smaller contract to work out the small amount of difference. But I don't think that's going to be a big deal because that contract is working its way through the bureaucracy. So, if next week we find out this and then we do our allocation amendments, we can talk about doing maybe amount up to, and then we work out the details once you guys certify your allocation amendment, what the actuals are. So we have all hands on deck, so we'll figure it out. I don't think it's going to take any longer than what it's already taking. So I don't know if that's reassuring or not, but so Wendy says the uncertainty of future funding seems to incentivize us to spend slower so we can roll over funds against future cuts. Yeah, conversely, we do have some people wanting to recapture that carryover if you hold on to it, because they have been spending the money based on needs. So it's kind of a mixed bag. So I see your point about to spend slower, but conversely, on the other side, there's some districts and consortia that are running out of money. And so, you have the haves and the have-nots, and people are eyeballing anybody with carryover, justifying why you're having that, why do you hold on to it. So it leads for, or results in an interesting conversation and can get heated at sometimes. Bronca says, consortium annual plan, member work plan is one thing. There are changes, members can check a box for the sections. I don't think that is very time consuming, correct? And Yulene says, I think September 30th for member work plan certification due. Okay, just reiterating the due dates, and then Veronica or Holly put the link in there. And then Wendy says we aim for an 18-month spend down. Is that reasonable? Right now, we have a 30-month spend down. It's just a question of, in course, consortia with multiple members, some are spending at different rates. There's conversations about what's an appropriate spend down period. So I think, Wendy, within your consortia, you would have that conversation of what's appropriate, which might be a different conversation in another consortia with different types of members in different situations. So I think it's all regional and it all varies. And then you have the state guidance, which is 30 months. So you work within that. But bylaws vary from region to region. Marianne says, how will carryover affect our ability to justify we need the money back that was reduced? I'm trying to keep my carryover at a minimum. Yeah, good point. I mean, yes, that is that is a problem, but the carryover discussion is really within our program. Legally, by statute, we're supposed to get the funds out within the year, and then we spend it within 30 months, and then we close it out within 36 months, or that 6-month period. So no money ever goes back to the state. We never really recapture money and send it back to the general fund. So when the legislature looks at our program, they think that we're doing great. But within the regions, within the consortia, there is that ebb and flow of dollars. And the discussion in the chat today showed some people save it, because they want to keep it for when things get bad and the uncertainty. And then other people are going forward, serving, their students, and they need more money. They're hiring teachers, doing different things. So it really is a mixed bag. So it's always good to have that discussion and see what works for you. I don't want to say one way is better and one way is not, but like I said, it varies from region to region. People have different bylaws on reallocation, what that looks like, what the discussion is. And so you'll see different types of spending habits and spending bylaws around the state, all within that 30-month umbrella right now. Veronica, anything else to add on that?
No, I think you've covered it.
Okay. And someone said, happy birthday, Holly. Is it Holly's birthday today? Is that a true fact?
It is.
Oh, all right. Well,
Yes.
happy.
Hey, Holly.
Thank you. And thank you, Emma. I love your picture.
Okay, now you're getting lots of love in the chat. All right. So what's the next slide? Are we moving on to the slide, back to the slideshow, Veronica? Unless we
Yes,
had
we
other
are.
specific non-birthday related questions.
Well, yes, 1 second.
All right. And oh, one thing I saw on the slides that'll be in the memo. If you need to, we do have a lot of good resources on our planning webpage. We have a planning tools site as well. But we were just going through the planning tools recently. You know, we have the self-assessment tool you can always use. We have those regional fact sheets that are from last year, but they're still with all that census data that's current. Those are really good. And then new adult literacy and numeracy fact sheets that you can use and drill down to your local level. Those are helpful too. And so we also have the USC immigration maps and naturalization charts. So a lot of good resources on our planning webpage that will help you if you're looking to see what the data says, if you're looking at demographics, if you're looking at need population in the region, all that's there. A lot of good information. So next slide, please. Okay, then we're going to move into fiscal reporting, and we kind of talked about this. Yeah, we already covered this. So just a reminder. Next slide, please. And then we kind of know about FIFO. We've kind of talked about it in the chat, not specifically, but the 3 years expense reporting. And then the big difference, just to highlight here, is we know your local accounting office sometimes tracks their expenses differently than we do in NOVA, which is fine. NOVA is the state CAEP fiscal system, and we track it FIFO. Some accounting offices track it by allocation year to year. That's fine, but they don't actually have to match up, because if you're looking at it differently 1 year compared to 3 years, it might be different. If you're doing FIFO, we're expending the oldest funds first, whereas a local accounting office might say, oh, you spent 50% of 1718 and 30% of 1819 and 10% of 1920, when we're saying you've spent 80% of 1718 or something like that. So it might not match up. Next slide, please. Okay, so more, I think we talked about this a little bit. So I'm going to move on in the interest of time to get to some of the questions. And then this is where Veronica went through the work plan. And so we're kind of at the end here. So Winnie said, was this bought for an automotive adult school? No, no CAEP funds were used on that car. So let's see, and then a copy of this PowerPoint is in the chat if you need it. And then Peggy was talking about fee-fi-fo fum is the FIFO. That's only if you're getting your funds taken away is the fee-fi-fo fum, Peggy. That's the giant coming down to swoop up your carryover. All right, so I don't know, we have about 20 minutes. Yulene, TAP will post the recording probably, Veronica, later today or on Monday. When will we archive the recording? Later today. Okay. So any other questions? Anything you want to talk about? Don't have the crystal ball on what the governor's going to do. So we'll see. It'll be interesting. We're prepared. We've already gone through this exercise once, so we can be even faster to do it for a second time. And we'll in communication with CDE and the Chancellor's office to make sure that we get these funds moving along. And so we're hoping no snags there. Anything else? Okay. It's really hot up here in Sacramento, so I envy anybody on the coast enjoying breezy, foggy, partly cloudy conditions. Inland, it's definitely 20 to 30 degrees warmer. So, all right, Veronica or Holly, any final words before we wrap up?
Yes, thank you, Neil. So I have posted the link for our registration page to locate upcoming events. We have a webinar on Tuesday, which will be data diving during COVID-19 with Jay. So definitely, if you haven't registered for that, tune in for that. And then we'll take the month of July off as we are preparing for our fall opportunities. And so on August 5th, we'll have the CAEP Data and Accountability for 2020-2021, and that will be with Neil, Jay Wright from Costas, as well as Randy Tillery from WestEd. So that'll be kind of that beginning of the year webinar as it relates to data and accountability. Then the next week, we'll be moving into our second iteration of the CAEP Regional Network meetings. We did receive a lot of positive feedback from those regional network meetings. And so we have opened up registration for those. They'll run from August 10th through August 26th. Each region has been identified within the description. So definitely register for your particular region. But if you also want to attend other regional meetings, you are more than welcome to. So take a look at those. If you haven't registered as of yet, you are able to register now, and we're planning the structure of those, making sure that they're very engaging and interactive, and that they are successful once again. So definitely be on the lookout for that, and then additional opportunities that we'll be planning over the summer that will be offered through this fall.
All right. And so next week, we'll stay tuned to see what happens with the budget. You'll hear more from us on that. And then sign up for the webinars that Veronica was talking about. And I appreciate Veronica walking us through NOVA, because she's the only one that can do that. I am lost in NOVA, so I really appreciate Veronica's expertise there. So thank you, Holly, for maintaining the chat, and we look forward to conversing with you soon. You guys have a great weekend.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.